All right, my name is Sydney Nillette, and I completed my summer internship at Theraley Physical Therapy in Newington, Connecticut. Um, Theraley is a brand new physical therapy business that opened at the beginning of June, which was about a week before I started my internship. So it was kind of cool to be able to experience what it's like to start a new business and kind of see what challenges come along with that. So my first impression was that her facility was extremely organized, and I honestly expected it to be a little bit chaotic just because it was a brand new business. But Yarden, the physical therapist that I did my internship with, was super organized and knowledgeable, and it did not feel like it was a brand new business, which was super cool. Um, Expectations I had going in were just that I was going to be able to learn from a professional, obviously. Um, Yarden is pretty young, so she's pretty fresh out of grad school. So it was cool to be able to learn more about what grad school is like, what to expect, and also just like the application process for that. Um, I also expected to have hands on experience. Obviously, I knew going in I wasn't going to be able to do much with like manual therapy just because I'm not certified, but I was able to observe her while doing that, and then I was able to be more hands on when it came to exercises and correcting form and stuff. Then I expected to improve my patient interaction skills, which I definitely did. I tend to be a pretty shy and introverted person, so I was a little bit nervous about interacting with patients, but um, the as my internship like moved forward, I definitely got more comfortable with it. And looking back now, I definitely do see some improvement when it comes to patient interaction skills. As far as my daily responsibilities go, um, well, first of all, I went to her office about 2 to 3 days a week, and then about once a week, I would go with her to different gymnastics gyms around Connecticut to treat patients there. Obviously, I have a gymnastics background, but she did as well. So we were able to connect on that, and it was cool that I was able to be in an environment that I was comfortable in and watch her treat patients there. But when I was in her office, I would start off with my morning tasks, which usually included turning on the TV, the music, the AC, and then doing some cleaning like vacuuming, wiping down the table or other surfaces. Um, yeah, and then next I would do about 1 to 2 hours of observing and shadowing. This was a perfect opportunity for me to ask any questions I had, and Yarden made me feel super comfortable and made me feel like every question was a good question, which was awesome. Next, I would do about an hour or two of um, whatever she needed me to do that day. So she would usually have a checklist, and on that checklist would be things like unboxing different items she had purchased for her patients to purchase. So examples of this were back and shoulder venoms, and then she also bought um, these electrolyte packages called Element. Um, so she was selling those things for her patients to buy, which I thought was super cool, and I feel like isn't super common in physical therapy offices, especially the ones that I've been to personally. Other things on that list would be things like creating social media posts. So I would make Instagram reels or different posts about like a day in the life of a PT or things like that. And I would also create flyers for her for if she was going to like an event and wanted to promote her business. And then lastly, I would guide patients through exercises and help correct their technique, which I'm super grateful I had the opportunity to do because going in, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do that. Okay, so some skills I gained during my internship. These are just a few. I feel like I learned so much, but I put some of the most important ones I feel like I gained. So the first one is just patient communication and interaction. Again, like I talked about earlier, I wasn't super comfortable going in with interacting with patients, but I definitely feel like I improved, and I'm so grateful for that. Along with this, Yarden just taught me the importance of having a good um, relationship with the patients. It helps them to feel comfortable and it just helps them feel more motivated too. Next, I learned a lot about injury prevention. A lot of the patients that Yarden worked with came in not necessarily with like a specific injury, but just with minor aches or pains. So she would work with them through that to hopefully prevent injuries that could come up due to those aches and pains. And she just taught me the importance of not only treating injuries, but also preventing them. Next, I learned a lot about documentation and organization. These were kind of things that I didn't necessarily think about when it came to physical therapy, but now I know how important it is. With this means that you have to be good with time management, because especially for her, since she's the only physical therapist, she has to do her manual therapy, exercises, and documentation. And so it's just super important to stay organized through this so that you can get everything done. Next, I learned a lot about rehabilitation techniques. She taught me about scraping, cupping, dry needling, because she is dry needling certified, and then just like manual massaging and theragunning and all that kind of stuff. So I'm super grateful that she had all those things accessible to her so that she could teach me. And then lastly on here, I wrote motivational skills. I noticed a lot of times with the younger athletes who came in, they weren't always super motivated, but Yarden made sure to do pretty much as she could to motivate them. And she also did this by explaining to them the importance of physical therapy, and also explaining to them that this isn't only going to help their pain, but it's also going to improve whatever sport they do. So with my internship, definitely came some challenges, especially because it is a brand new business. I'll give an example of this. So there was one day when a patient came in, and Yarden was expecting to work with them on a completely different injury. But when they came in, they were almost in tears because of how much pain they were in for a different reason. So Yarden kind of had to work through that and change her plan for the day with that patient. And she explained to me that this isn't super uncommon, and it's important to be adaptable and be willing to kind of change up your plans to help the patient. There were other challenges that I can't necessarily talk about just because there are some legal issues right now, but Yarden kept such a positive attitude during such a challenging time, and that just taught me that really anything is possible, even when you're struggling with some of the hardest things. So again, I learned so much with this internship, but my 3 biggest takeaways are how important having a connection with your patients is. Yarden was super open with all of her patients, which helped the patients open up to her. And yeah, it's just so important to make your patient feel comfortable and motivated. The second biggest takeaway is definitely that progress takes time and consistency. Sometimes patients would come in feeling frustrated that their pain hadn't gone away yet, or they felt like they were doing worse than they were before. And so Yarden just taught them the importance of continuing to work through their exercises and continuing to stay positive. And we noticed a lot of the time that when patients came in complaining about these kinds of things, it meant that a lot of time they weren't doing their exercises at home. So they were only doing their exercises 1 to 2 times a week when they came to physical therapy. So that was pretty interesting. And then the third biggest takeaway was just how important it is to educate your patient. I talked about this a couple slides ago, but it was cool because Yarden was teaching me about why she was doing certain things and how to do certain things, but she was also educating her patient, which she said she's always done. So it was cool to see that, just because it's nice to know as a patient why things are being done and how they're going to help you. So my advice for future interns, this is just a couple pieces of advice, but there's so many. First of all, just be adaptable. Going in every day, you don't necessarily know what you're going to be doing, but just try to keep an open mind, and yeah, being positive and keeping an open mind obviously will help so much. Next, and I feel like one of the most important things about doing an internship is just asking questions. I feel like asking questions is one of the best ways to learn. Obviously, you can look things up on the internet, but you're going to learn so much more when interacting with someone face to face. Next, I feel like it's so important to build relationships, not only with your supervisor and other people working at the business, but also with the patients. A lot of times you can network and meet new people just through the patients, which I was able to do with a few of the patients, and it was so cool because now I have even more connections than I thought I would going in. And then again, just be positive. There's going to be challenges, it's going to be hard sometimes, but being positive is not only going to reflect onto your patients, but it's also just going to make you feel better in the long run. Okay, so I took a few questions off of the document that I would like to answer. So the first one, what pushed you outside of your comfort zone? There were definitely a lot of things, but I feel like the biggest thing was towards the end of my internship. There were a few days when I would come in and Yarden would say, all right, you're in charge today. You're going to walk the patients through the exercises, come up with the exercises, come up with the reps, the sets, the weight, all the stuff. And so the first day she did that, I was kind of shocked and nervous. But at the end of the day, I'm so glad she did because I feel even more confident now. And I'm just grateful that she did that. So, what is your next step? My next step is to obviously get through senior year. I have another internship in the fall that I'm excited about. And then obviously applying to grad school and hopefully going to grad school in May or in the fall of 2026. I'm this summer I was able to go to Florida and South Carolina because that's ultimately where I want to end up. And I was able to visit about 7 grad schools there. And yeah, so next steps, just continue to push forward, continue to work towards grad school, and then ultimately becoming a PT. And I'm super excited. Thank you.